Always
That would be good.
That's what they're. You didn't do what you said you were going to. Well, you know, we've got one now. We've got a drainage. She's over the hill.
I did not say what you
said.
She has been waiting for a male
I'm
assistant.
just commenting because
I
I
actually thought he might
went
be
through
here
again.
today.
Well, in all fairness, I've been waiting for a female assistant, they haven't given me one. They'll just shut down the line rather than give me a female.
So we'll weigh it. We may come back to it.
Brad. Thankfully, we're not called over yet. The camera's not on,
Yeah,
right?
it's all right, so,
Oh.
yeah, it's time.
That'll teach you.
Strike
Add a little color.
Entirely unlike every other profession. When I bought the children,
13.
13, thank you.
I was trying to see how people.
Okay, with a quorum of the board present, I call the meeting to order. Roll call of board members. Commissioner Buck.
Here.
Commissioner Rooney.
Here.
Commissioner Swenson.
Here.
Commissioner Evans.
Here.
And Commissioner Talcott's here, and Commissioner Holden is not. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First item is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is made up of routine day-to-day items that require board action but do not appear to have significant public impact. Items may be pulled from the consent agenda for separate discussion or vote by any board member. The agenda consists of the approval of the board meeting minutes from September 27th meeting, payroll checks totaling $87,833.14, maintenance and operations checks numbered 22,613 through 22,694 totaling $1,372,559.92. The approval of the passenger facility charge totaling $60,000 and the financial reports for September. Anybody have any comments on it, on the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, director's report.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of things to cover. The first of which is just to kind of review the sort of the holiday schedule of meetings. The Christmas party is scheduled, or holiday party is scheduled for December 13th. At the current time, we don't anticipate having a meeting. Prior to that, as some years we've come in and met. At the last meeting, we sort of said since no one on the board is changing place, is new to the board this next year, that it would be okay if we waited till January to approve the audit. In that case, I don't see anything right now that would necessitate a December meeting, unless anyone's mind has changed on that. There's a chance we might have a new board member in time for the December meeting, although not likely. I mean, given the how close we are to the end of the year, likely we would have somebody new by January. So. That person could obviously sit out of the vote on the audit if they're uncomfortable because they weren't part of that fiscal year. But I think we have enough of a board present from year to year that we should be able to approve the audit in January if everyone's still okay with that. In which case we would just probably, what time were we doing the?
We've just depended on if we had a meeting or not.
So we probably won't have a meeting, so we could start at a normal dinner time if people would prefer that. Say like a 6 p.m. Type thing. We'll just do our normal dinner and do it that way. So that's the 13th. The November meeting falls on the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. For the purposes of getting the agenda out, people actually having time to mess with it. We would recommend we move that meeting to the 22nd, if everyone's okay with it, which would be the Tuesday prior to Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving week, so it's kind of,
Yeah, it's a pick your poison, that, you know, a couple days after the holiday or a couple days before. You know, and I mean, I guess if we could move it to, no magic in meeting on a Tuesday. I mean, if we wanted to meet the Friday prior to that or something, we could probably move that.
I'm happy to do it for,
go ahead.
sorry, it's good for me. Better for me.
Either one.
Okay.
Senator Martinez.
And I'm happy to do anything except I probably can't attend. My United schedule's going to be locked in. So.
Okay. Well, we can check with Commissioner Hoven to make sure we have a quorum, but it sounds like the 22nd might work better for some folks anyway. I know it'll work better for Maria, so she'd be happy with it.
Please, you can answer their questions.
All right, so we'll plan on the 22nd. We'll check to make sure we have a quorum, and if so, then we'll go ahead and move that meeting. On to the audit. We've just received our first draft of the audit. We're trying to get the Finance Committee together in the near future, but it looks a lot like last year. It looks like a small decline in expenses, a small decline in revenue, both around $10,000. Other than that, a very similar fiscal year, which is encouraging. Yeah, nothing. No immediate trends that I looked through and thought, wow, this is different. But the pension will continue to be the lion's share of the notes to the financial statement as those requirements have changed over the last 2 years. I think that pension note this year takes up something like 10 pages of the notes to the financial statements. That'll be the largest share of words committed to that in the audit. But all in all, I think the financials are looking pretty good. We still have a few open questions and then we're trying to run down, but for the most part, I think we're pretty close to a solid draft of the audit. Also of note, the ARC RFP open house. We're going to host a non-mandatory open house for anybody that wants to come in and ask questions about the 2 ARC pieces that we hope to acquire. That'll occur on November, no, I've forgotten the date, 2nd. Yes, I think that's right, the 2nd at 11 a.m. Here in this room. Then we'll go out and do a site visit with anybody that wants to go out and look at the site. We've had a lot of interest. I'd say well over a dozen people have asked for the RFP. The state did blast it out to their email list of activists, and that seemed to have really gotten around to a lot of folks. And so we've had a lot of questions. I anticipate we might actually have some attendance at this and some people eager to know more about the project, so that's good. The proposals are actually due the week after Thanksgiving. I think they're due right on the 30th, so there'll be some amount of time to incorporate changes in there. Go ahead.
Back on your previous item,
Mm-hmm.
10 pages of footnotes, what does it do for us? Or what effect does it have on us budget-wise? I mean, what are they? We're underfunded. What is, are they asking more money from us?
Well, we're supposed to reserve a liability for the potential for us to have to pay. So in other words, we're setting up a long-term liability to offset the potential of a claim against the pension, that the state couldn't achieve the full payout. So yeah, there is a liability accrued, and then the offset to that is going to reduce equity. But they don't ask us to expense it or anything like that or reserve against it. All public agencies are now subjected to the same entry.
How far underfunded do they think it is?
Do you remember this year what the accruals are going to look like?
I have no clue. I have to look at it, but it's worth about 500,000, I think.
About 500,000 total.
500,000 for the
Not for this year,
public month?
for the total to date.
For all of our past employees, it would still be on the pension plan, and the current employees.
For the airport?
Yes.
500K only for the airport?
Yes.
I'm not sure, I have to
500K
double check
difference.
that, okay? But
Yeah, and
not a
the
real
state,
number.
as of just a couple weeks ago, the state was still working on the numbers for this year, because the numbers actually produced by the state, and then they dole it out to all the public agencies per, the number of employees you have that are still alive and collecting from the program.
So it's a prior period adjustment?
Yes.
Is that how they're treating it?
Exactly, and there's, like I said, a very lengthy note about the pension.
John, what number are they using for expected growth in that pension, do you know?
It's coming from the state. It's
Right.
the report's coming from the state.
So
Well, do we know what number they're using for their growth of their investments for the pension
Oh,
fund?
I don't know what
I
they're-
read through it and not 100%, but there's different kind of percentages that they're talking about, but the growth rate is like, they're considering the 3% for the growth rate. They're considering the 4% including the inflation. They're considering the average of 7.75% investment rate over time.
7.75.
Yeah, but that, they're just saying that there's a lot of aquarial reports that they consider, and there's a lot of, like the consideration that they have to put in there, but they're just saying these are the options, these are the possibilities. There's no set number on it. The only thing that are set, I think, is like the 4% and the 3% inflation. Yeah.
And I don't know, Laura, maybe you know, are the latest employees added, are they in the defined contribution plan or defined benefit?
They still get to choose.
They still get to choose, because, I mean, that's what most states are doing, is they're moving, to where there's not a defined benefit any longer.
Right.
So you know what you have to put in, and then you get out of it what, a share of what's there. It sounds like Montana's not quite to that stage yet. You can still elect into the defined benefit plan. But I think over the long haul, that'll be what kind of gets this pension fund shored up, is you'll have to quit telling people exactly what they're getting.
It's a tricky bridge because they're using the current receipts to pay for the defined benefit pensions.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly, and as those employees fall off the system, then it gets cheaper. But both Colorado and Washington went to defined contribution while I was working in those states. For the new employees, they always sunset it based on when you were hired. But I think Montana will probably go the same route eventually.
If it's a anticipated $500,000 deficit based on 7.75% returns.
Could be much larger.
Much larger.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
And of
They're
course,
just saying those different kind of scenarios, though. They're not guaranteed or anything.
And it's a non-cash,
yeah,
it's a journal entry, basically.
yes, yeah, and a disclosure.
Sure.
And it doesn't affect our current year
Mm-mm.
pension contribution or calculation.
No,
Mm-mm.
It's all old stuff.
yep.
It would just be shown as a liability.
Yeah, it'll be a liability and a reduction to our equity would be how they'll account for it.
Just curious.
In any event, the
I'm
RF,
so glad we made that adjustment, though. I think that's a wonderful thing.
you actually, yeah,
Yeah, because it matters to somebody, somewhere.
somewhere,
Yeah.
it's investing in airports. The art RFP, as I said, we will have an open house. Anyone that wants to attend that can. It's not mandatory for the artists or anyone else, but be a good opportunity just to see what people are thinking about the project.
Is
So,
it primarily for the artist?
yes, yeah.
Just to see the space?
See the site, ask any questions. We'll document all the questions that we get that day and post answers. If it's something we can't, we can't answer right on the spot, but just a general idea to come in and ask about the project, and see what what we might be open to. I mean, you never know what people might propose.
Do you have names of some of the people who are?
I don't know if Vivian has any of those folks.
We do.
She has them.
Have the names.
I haven't looked through them.
Interesting to see sometime.
Jackson Pollard, Andy Orwell.
Will they be attending?
The engineering RFP, just to update everybody on that. We heard from the FAA in the last week that our master plan will be approved, hopefully by the end of November or the second or third week of December. And the FAA has said that once that's out there, we need to give it a little bit of time for people to read the master plan, but it should set us up to begin a RFP process around the first of the year for a new engineering contract. So Maria's working on drafting the RFP right now. The FAA will have to approve that RFP hopefully between now and the end of the year. It's actually an RFQ, request for qualifications. And then we'll plan to try to put a committee meeting together sometime hopefully in February to review proposals. Then we'll be conducting interviews probably by March at that time, and hope to make the selection in March. So the committee work would probably happen in February to review proposals, short list, to interview, and then probably a set of interviews sometime in early March. That's kind of the schedule we're on right now. The update on the city parcel, we've had further discussions over the last month and a half on the city parcel. I think we had a good meeting last week, and I think, to summarize things, what I've tried to convey to the city is, a lease structure can be approved at the Helena level. Anything beyond a lease, and it has to go to the federal level of the FAA, which subjects it to a lot more question as to whether or not we should be selling that parcel, whether, what compensation we should receive, how far back we're looking into time as to when things should or shouldn't have happened. I think it just opens up a lot more questions. So my guidance to the city has been, let's try to do something we can do locally. I think there's a lot of opportunity to come up with some solutions between us and the Helena ADO. I thought we had a really good meeting last week and made some progress there, and hopefully we'll be able to present something to the board potentially even in November that might be a way to work out of this transaction. That would be my goal. I think the city is still trying to come to grips with the fact that they had the lease with the other part of the FAA that they don't feel was fulfilled, and that really taints their feeling about resolving this issue with the property going forward. But hopefully we can move beyond that. I also learned at this meeting for the first time they have some desire to expand that facility in the future over here, which of course frustrates the entire issue because if we've got more land involved or the other half of that parcel that was divided off involved, it just makes it harder for us to come to an agreement that the FAA will approve. So hopefully we can pull all that together and come back in November with a proposal. That's my hope. On to capital projects. The runway project had a big couple of weeks over the last 2 weeks. The SRE yard is complete. It's been paved completely and looks really nice. They also completed a first lift of asphalt all along the taxiway, which is a big step forward because now we're more or less winterized. If we would get really bad winter or really bad conditions over the next couple of weeks, everything will stay in place in winter okay. Based on the amount of production they're getting right now, the peak days are right around 3,000 tons of asphalt being placed. Their slower days right around 2,500 tons of asphalt being placed. On that pace, we need about 2 more weeks of good production, 2 more actually weeks of paving weather in order to complete the paving on the project. Their goal is they've got 1 lift on the taxiway. They want to go back and get the 2nd lift on the taxiway, and then they'll move over to the runway and do the paving over there. Because the runway has to sit for 30 days before it can be groove cut. It has to cure. So they would go over, do the runway, and then move back over and do the last lift on the taxiway after that. They also have a vehicle road that got relocated, a service road that we have to pave. They're setting up to pave that, sounds like in the next week.
This week, I think.
Oh, even this week. So they'll get that paved, and that'll winterize that surface too. So I'm actually really impressed with how much progress has been made in the last week. They've really gone a long way to securing this project if we get a bad early part of the winter. And I think there's still a pretty good outside chance of if we get good temperatures, which are in the forecast right now, that we could actually complete the paving. We were talking today about temporary markings. Paint would be the hardest thing for us to complete once paving's done because we have to have 40 degrees and rising. If paving takes another 3 weeks, it's going to be difficult to get a final paint down, but the contract does allow for temporary markings where they would go out and lay out the paint with a light coat and then come back in the spring and put the finish coat down. And then we could actually be open for the winter. So, all in all, I think for where we are in the season, we got to be pretty thankful that things are going as well as they are. Project's proceeding right now. There's no holdups that I'm aware of. You're not waiting on anything. The materials are on site and they're getting good production. So, all in all, a really good report out there.
They're working on the weekends?
They're working Saturdays. We've tried to talk them into, well, that's true. Last Saturday they were going to work, but then I think the elk got the better of them.
That happens.
It does happen. Yeah, they are working some Saturdays, and we've talked to them trying to get them interested in Sundays. Our hope would be they could send those paving guys home well before Thanksgiving if they would work some Sundays, but it doesn't sound like they're real interested in that right now. So yeah, we'll be right up to Thanksgiving with paving. So all in all, though, like I said, I'm really encouraged with what I see out there right now. Just a note, you probably saw in the weekly report, but for the good of the public, Alaska Airlines has announced a schedule increase starting on March 12th. They'll be flying the morning flights 6 days per week, or basically a full 2 flights a day, except for on Saturdays. And that's a good improvement. We had, as we reported last fall, we had some discussions with them about last summer. Really felt we were kind of shortchanged on the seating, and they tended to agree with that. So coming back in March with that full 6-day schedule, if we can get that full, puts us in a really good position to look at future destinations with Alaska. Hopefully we could get the advanced sales to the point where they would be interested in keeping that schedule through the fall. Of course, we'll be talking about that in the springtime. But all in all, a really nice improvement for next summer's service. That'll be about 3,500 seats for next summer, and I'll show you that in the presentation here in a few minutes. And then lastly, the city has posted now twice a notice for a new board member for the authority board. My understanding is they have not yet gotten any applications. So if you know anyone that might be interested in serving on the board, it'd be probably good to see if they'd send something into the city.
Is that common for what they're seeing with other boards right now?
It's really, no. I think the other boards do a little bit better. It's really interesting because the county seems to generate excess candidates, and the city seems to every time to have no candidates. Isn't that?
We do get more on the county.
For whatever reason,
What is
But
the
we've never
criteria?
gotten none.
well, the city has gotten none before, because we had to post it all the way into November that one year. And I think that might have been the year that you came on.
Oh, yeah, they begged me.
I thought it was tough competition when we came on.
That's our story, and we're sticking to it, yeah.
I didn't mean it that way. But no, there was a year there where they got no applicants at all. They had to go like 3 times out and advertise before they got anybody. And then they got 4 or 5. So I don't know if it was the time of year or what, but.
Do applicants need to live in the city limits in order
So
to be considered? or-
The city has said that they don't. And so the last couple of appointments, they've had a couple people that don't live in the city. So they have to have a tie to the city, I suppose. But the city decided that they didn't. They actually looked at that during the last go-around and determined that they didn't think they had to. Now, I don't know about the county. I had even suggested that if somebody from Shelby wanted to be on the board, I think that would be helpful to have some outreach into these other communities. But I think the county determined that they didn't want anyone outside Cascade County.
No one from Lethbridge.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that. It's interesting you say that because one of the board members from Lethbridge was actually intending to come to our meeting today. And I got a nice call from him a few weeks ago. He was very impressed with our new campaign up there and felt like he'd like to come down and explore opportunities to work closer together. As it turned out, he booked a flight next Friday, so he's actually coming next Friday instead, and we're going to have the same meeting. So, but I think that's great. The more we can reach out into these other communities that we serve, I think that's positive.
Or if the city talks to the county, does the county have an evergreen list that they're kind of working with that they could?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Because it's been a couple of years since we've had a vacancy.
Huh.
Well, Vince Bakke has expressed interest.
Oh, has he?
But he does not live in the city limits. That's why.
And I think that's fine. The city reached out the last time, and they've put several people on the committee that don't live in town.
Did Deb live in that? I
No.
don't think she did.
No, she was out in Cascade.
But I never thought about that.
I live in Fairfield.
And he lives in
Oh,
Fairfield.
Fairfield? Oh.
The city's been very open-minded.
Well, then I'll tell him he has to apply.
Yeah. That's the outcome he has to apply.
Yeah, matters.
And that's all I have on the director's report.
Can I ask a couple
Sure.
questions?
Yes, absolutely.
What would be the timing then of the January meeting? Would it be the 4th Tuesday or the 5th?
It'd be the last Tuesday of the month.
Okay, it's the 31st.
Is it the 31st?
Yeah, okay. And,
We can always move that, but the general prejudice is to go the last Tuesday.
Are you preparing for the slate of candidates? for the executive board?
No, I'm
I'm
preparing
glad
to
to-
tell you I would miss the meeting if it was on the 24th.
Oh.
That's why, in case there's a quorum issue. And if we have to vote on something. And then, is there an update on the fuel permit, that liability issue?
Laura, do you want to update on?
Yeah, still working on it.
Oh, okay, okay.
And I've been working with Dwight, talked to some other airports, talked to our insurance company, and we still need to get some answers in place. I mean, I think overall, we've got the permit, it's good, but just looking at that dollar amount, we're not sure that the current fuelers say that they are covered for pollution under an umbrella, under their general liability. Insurance agents are telling me you cannot have pollution covered under the general liability. So we're kind of revolutionary as well, because no one else in Montana is doing this. So we had an incident occur, and that's what spurred it, but there's not a lot.
And that's not surprising. Even when I was at SeaTac, the airport, because of an accident, we had I think it was a Staples truck get into an accident on the airfield. And then, suddenly the question, during the meeting, we're watching the Coke trucks pulling across, out in front of the airfield and everything else. And, everyone said, wow, we got to get a handle on this because, do all these people have any insurance? And of course, many of them didn't have, our level of insurance. And so it's not surprising, even for a large operation, to identify liabilities that aren't being covered. And operators that are working on your airfield, sometimes in really precarious areas that you didn't realize weren't insured.
What are Staples trucks and Coke trucks doing?
There was no loading docks or way to, if you look at the satellites, it's north and south satellites, there's no loading docks that can get anything to them. So everything had to either go by that little train that they had, that goes out there, or they had to be driven out there. And I think even to this day, people are still driving stuff out there. In fact, I remember a discussion about whether or not the ATM out there could have a gun taken to it. You'd think that would have been thought of before, but it was a real issue. The Wells Fargo guys said, or the Wells Lamont guys said he wouldn't go without a gun, and of course you don't want a gun out on your airfield. So that became a big issue overnight. That was after 9/11. So many of these things that there's so much activity at an airport, and so many vendors that are here that you don't realize are here until you have a liability situation like this, and then you start looking, and there's a lot of things you should probably consider.
So we're close.
Okay.
Just getting the details in order.
I would think the policy somewhere in the fine print would say whether pollution liability fits under the umbrella or not. And if it's not clear, then
Right.
the insurance companies are going to err on the side where we ain't paying.
Right, and that's what I was just talking about with Dwight today is, if they could show us proof that they have it.
Or have their insurance
Then-
company provide a statement.
Yeah,
I
then
mean,
then
that
it's
usually
fine.
gets to the root of it.
Right. So,
Yeah, if they leave it gray, they leave it gray for a reason.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, are there anything, other items that would be, anybody like to bring to the board, or an item you'd like to bring to the board?
Anything's like,
Dan, did anybody tell you what committees you're on since you've been here?
No.
I thought that might be in the minutes.
That was that email I sent.
Oh, you did, oh, okay. Just
He
looking
was
out
on all
for
of
you.
them.
Christmas party planning committee.
Everybody will get a gift card. For dinner or something.
Okay, Airport Authority comments. Commissioner Buck, any comments?
I appreciate all the effort. I'm very pleased to see the progress on the runway and taxiway structure. I think that's going to be a big boon to our operation here.
Thank you.
No comments.
I have no comment. Any comments from the public? Okay, well, I think with no further business to come before the board, I declare the meeting adjourned, and unless anybody has A specific reason to break,
How about 2 minutes?
2 minutes, okay. Someone does have a specific reason. I'll give you 5, just in case.
Did you, we did adjourn, right?
We did.
Turn off.